is today. One of the questions that we raised on the first night of our discussion was the following. In terms of hierarchy, what is more important, interfaith work or intrafaith work? Interfaith, of course, is between the Muslim community and other faiths. Intrafaith work is between different sects of the one Muslim community. If you look at the Quran, of course, the Quran has many ayat emphasizing the importance of interfaith work. And you would say, of course, well, it cannot emphasize intra-faith work because there were no sects at the time of Islam's revelation. There were, of course, however, different verses about how the Muslims should interact with one another. There were, of course, Muslims who were considered to be mu'mineen and Muslims who were considered to be munafiqeen as well. So the Quran doesn't ignore the issue of relations between Muslims and the way in which we deal with different types of Muslims. It does set up a precedent. However, in terms of the hierarchy that we get from the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has emphasized and overemphasized the need for different faiths to come together, to work together, to be able to find unity in their practices, and to be able to ensure that for the collaborative effort of making a working, sustainable, productive society, that the different faiths would come together. Arguably, a lot of the work that we end up doing in terms of interfaith tends to be very much around the photo shop or the photo opportunities that we have. You'll have the sheikh or whatever, you'll have the priest, you'll have the rabbi, and they will give some nice talk maybe once a year about Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, or maybe we'll give a talk once a year about Christmas or something like that. What we want to be able to discuss tonight, inshallah, is for us to think a bit more broadly about how interfaith works, the principles that we need to have, and how we can actually go about communicating some of the issues that we have to the outside communities in the hope that we can work together for the realization that actually we are facing the very same challenges. When we've talked about God being wiped away, it's not just something that affects the Muslim community. If secularism is on the rise, if atheism is on the rise, then it also affects the Christian and Judaic community as much as it affects the Muslim community. And so there is a need for us to be able to work together to ensure that we can learn about each other's faiths, to ensure that we are able to deal with the challenges that we have together. Now, where we want to start with tonight is going a little bit deeper into responses. You know, what's the definition? Who's a scientist among us here? Or who's someone who enjoys science? Well, yesterday we had a few hands up for business. Today we only have the youth sticking their hands up for science. So you like science. Excellent. What is the definition of a living thing? Definition of a living thing is something that responds to stimuli, right? That's how you know something is living. When we die, we don't respond to any type of stimuli. At an individual level, you will notice that there are certain states that we exist within. The Quran mentions that we are expected to respond in accordance with certain states that we live in, to prove that we are spiritually alive. As an example, the Holy Quran mentions, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِكُلِّ صَبَّارٍ وَشَكُورٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in this there are signs for everyone who is patient and grateful. So now when things happen to us, when any bala happens to us, when any test happens to us, we're expected to respond to that stimuli. We're supposed to respond with gratitude. We're supposed to respond with patience. We're supposed to respond in kind to that particular stimulus. Think now at the level of a society. Think now at the level of a community. If you look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes gives collective descriptions of certain communities which tell us how they are collectively responding to certain stimuli. When events happen to that community, when practices occur within that community, when different features of events happen to that community, you will see that they respond in a certain way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then gives them a quote or a title, a characteristic, a feature to tell them about their stimulus, to tell them about the responses that they have to that particular stimulus. Let me give you an example. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions many times Antum qawmun, and then he concludes it with different descriptions of collective peoples, of communities. For example, in Surah Al-A'raf, chapter number 7, verse number 81, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the lust that some people have for the same gender. And he says at the end of the verse, he says, بَلْ أَنْتُمْ قَوْمٌ مُسْرِفُونَ, that you are a people who are given to excess, wastage of what you have been given. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in chapter number 26, Surah Al-Shu'ara, verse number 166, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, بَلْ أَنْتُمْ قَوْمٌ عَادُونَ, that you are a people who transgress the bounds of what is right. Surah An-Naml, chapter number 27, verse number 47, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بَلْ أَنْتُمْ قَوْمٌ تُفْتَنُونَ, surely indeed you are a people undergoing a test. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala interestingly says in chapter number 27, Surah An-Naml, verse 55, again about this issue about the lust that a community has for its same gender. He says, بَلْ أَنْتُمْ قَوْمٌ تَجْهَلُونَ, indeed you are a people without any awareness, you're a people of ignorance. Now think about what's being said here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that a certain community, by virtue of their practices, collectively He can give them a certain description. If you look at the scholars of linguistics, they will often say that being jahil, someone who is ignorant, it has two opposites. The first opposite to being jahil, being ignorant, is ilm, someone who knows. And the second is that jahl is the opposite to extremisms. So now when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls a community and He says, you are a community who are ignorant, بَلْ أَنْتُمْ قَوْمٌ تَجْهَلُونَ, what you can see is there is a lack within them of certain features, certain characteristics, that they are exhibiting certain things and that they lack certain things within themselves. If you see this, and you can see that Mecca had its own characteristics, Medina had its own characteristics, and here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give a community a collective sifa or sifat in order to express what they were like and what they were not like, what they had and what they didn't have. It becomes very clear that the mind would immediately ask a simple question. Well, what would the description of our community be? Our nation be? Our civilization be? Do we fall into this type of category or this? Do we fall into this type of category or this? And you can see here that when a prophet came, any prophet came, whatever was the civilizational challenge, the prophet immediately responded to that particular challenge. Shu'aib alayhi salam, his community, what did they do? They used to, with their trade, they used to try to oppress others through theft and through the manipulation of the trade that they have. Shu'aib alayhi salam came and responded to it. Ibrahim alayhi salam's community had a challenge, he responded to it. The Holy Prophet of Islam's community had particular challenges, he responded to it. When we talk about the interfaith dialogue, we don't just mean the idea of proselytization and going out and saying, I want to convert you into my faith. I want you as a Jew or a Christian to become Muslim. This is not the purpose of interfaith dialogue. The purpose of interfaith dialogue has always been to analyze the challenges that exist within the community, that all of the different faiths are also facing, to come together in order to defeat those challenges, so that the unity that exists between the Abrahamic faiths are a means to push back the evil that exists within that society. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Ya Ahlul Kitab, Ta'alaw ila kalimatin sawa'in baynana wa baynakum an la na'buda illa Allah. O Ahlul Kitab, people of the book, we share this experience with, from Adam to Ibrahim to Moses to Jesus. We share this common feature. Therefore, come towards a joint word in which we will serve none other than Allah. We will worship none other than Allah. It's often the case that when we imagine we have to set up interfaith work, it's very, very sporadic. And it's for the purpose of proselytization, to try to convert one another. Actually, the way in which the Islamic model of interfaith dialogue was to understand the challenges that existed within those different groups, that we all shared certain challenges, and to try to raise the bar in terms of how we work together. You can see that there are certain challenges that we have today that the Muslim community shares with the other Abrahamic faiths. And it also is the case that the Muslim community is being pushed into a certain narrative, or is being viewed through a certain lens. And immediately it tells us that the interfaith work has to be one which responds in kind to that. We talked yesterday about the issue of the RSE, or the LGBTQ question, or the rise of the far right. All of these affect all the other faith-based communities. But my view tends to be that I have to go out and create a very sporadic, one-off program with my Christian and Judaic brethren, and in the hope that somehow that will change the society that we live in. Now, there's one scholar who makes a very important point, who talks about the methodology of the Holy Prophet of Islam, Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And he says the following. He says, if you look at the Holy Prophet of Islam in Mecca, because it's very easy to talk about interfaith in Medina. He says, if you look at the way the Prophet dealt with things in Mecca and in Medina, he tried to set up two principles. His entire movement was based on two principles. We don't have to agree or disagree. We can think about what's being said by this scholar. Western scholar, academic scholar. He says the following, that the Prophet set up his movement on two principles. One, freedom of worship for all faiths. And two, fair trade, to remove oppression in the way in which people worked with each other. Phenomenal statement. He says, if you imagine the removal of boundaries towards worship, what it tends to be is that the Muslim community is very misunderstood and doesn't have the depth of its spiritual history and its spiritual program to be understood by others. Imagine if I asked, how many other faith-based communities know about Sahifa as-Sajjadiyya, as an example? The other faith-based communities, they have their spiritual literature, don't they? Especially the Christian community with the Psalms. Arguably, very few Christians know about Sahifa as-Sajjadiyya, which, with respect to the Psalms wouldn't even be considered a rival compared to the whispered prayers therein, or compared to the topics and the depths that exist therein. Now, one of the Maraji was talking about this, and he said, or Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Taqi al-Mudarrisi was giving some guidance or some recommendations to the community in the West. And he said the following. We mentioned this in the Q&A night, but we're going to go into it a little bit further. He said the great challenge that exists for the Muslim community in the Western world is the normalization of Islam. He made the following point. Think deeply about this point. Reflect on this point. Take this one point home tonight, inshallah. He said, Christianity, where is it from? Where does Christianity start in the world, geographically? Who can tell me? Not Syria. Syria, maybe we could say in terms of the wider Syria, but which area would we call it today? Palestine. Palestine. Judaism started where? Geographically. Egypt. And of course, Banu Israel had to flee from Fir'aun and go across the sea. Are either of these two Western religions? Palestine was in Greater Syria. Palestine is in the Middle East. Egypt is in North Africa. Are either of these two religions Western religions? No. Yet, across the Western world, Christianity and Judaism is so normal, yet it is a religion from the Middle East. Where is Islam from? Where did Islam start? Saudi Arabia. Astaghfirullah. definitely didn't start with Saudi Arabia. Hijaz, ahsant, occupied Hijaz, as it is today. It started in Mecca, correct? In Hijaz. Western religion? Western religion? No. All three of these religions are primarily coming from the same geographical part of the world. Yet two are considered to be so at home, so normal within the Western world, while one is considered to be so gharib, so alien to the Western world. You know, today there's certain literature, you may have seen, that says that there are Judaic Christian values. Have you come across that term? I was watching only the other day, there was a debate that was taking place, and one of the individuals was saying that, well, he was presenting the idea, and he said, science is a Western idea, but also it comes often from Judaic Christian values. What are Judaic Christian values? Do you know where this term started from? Judaic Christian, if you look at it in the history of all academic literature, started after 1945. It can't be found in any academic literature prior to 1945. Why? Because Europe wanted to reach out to our Judaic brethren who had been slaughtered in the Holocaust, killed en masse in the Holocaust, and to make them feel comfortable within Christian Europe, they started to call Europe and the West Judeo-Christian, to make them feel welcome. So the term is only 60, 70 odd years old. Yet today it's so normalized that we live within a Judaic-Christian valued society. Well, what are Judaic-Christian values? And how are they any different to Islamic values? But we have been so alienated, so ostracized, especially in certain mainstream media, that as a result, we feel very different to how the rest of the world feels. We are looked at very different to how the rest of the world is looked at. Principally, what is the difference between our value system and any other value system? You may have seen, there was a documentary that the BBC gave in the Edwardian times 100 years ago. 100 years ago in this country, all women, when they went out in public, they wore the equivalent of what we would call hijab, scarves 100 years ago. 100 years ago. Where are our values that are so different? It's only in the era of modernity and through the language that is used that we are separated and made to feel inferior. What happens now is, and this is a very important point in understanding interfaith dialogue, normalizing Islam, normalizing ourselves as second, third generation immigrant communities, what you'll see is that many people imbibe that inferiority complex. And then they end up having to be apologetic about their belief system. I'm sorry I believe in this, but you know who did this today so well? You know who is a great example of an inferiority complex? Sajid Javid. Did you see today Sajid Javid announced that he was going to run for Tory party leadership and Prime Minister leadership? Did you all see this? Yes? Some of you are nodding your head. Sajid Javid did this, right? His announcement, his video announcement, I don't know if any of you saw it. If you haven't, good for you. I wasted my time so I could tell you about it. You know what he said? He said, I'm so grateful that this country has allowed me to have the opportunity to, live a normal life and be in the Tory party and stand up and serve you. Why the inferiority complex? Why do you need to thank white people for the opportunity? You have a right to exist within this country as anyone else does. You have a right to flourish in this country as anyone else does. Why do you need to be apologetic about your own existence? I thank you for giving me this opportunity to have come up from where I have come up from. As a Muslim community, the challenge that we have today is to normalize Islam like every other religion is normalized. Now, how do we do that? How do we go about doing that particular challenge, as Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Taqi al-Mudarrisi mentioned? Well, we have a number of ways. The first way is to show how much we share with all of these different faiths. Because at the moment, most people don't understand what our tradition holds and what it exists in it. Most people, you'll imagine, and it's become a common trope nowadays. Not even water? You all know what I'm referring to, right? I'm fasting. Not even allowed to drink water? We're a third, fourth generation immigrant community, and they still don't know when we fast from sunrise to sunset. Whole month you can't eat? No. We'll go out for some wings tonight, don't worry. And the sisters will probably have heard this one more than anything. You have to wear that in the shower? The most common, basic values that we have are still very much unknown within our own society after being a third and fourth generation immigrant community. That tells us that in terms of the establishment that we have succeeded in our wildest dreams in terms of establishing within the four walls of the Husayniyah. What our elders have done for us as youth, we can never, I emphasize, never pay them back for the things that our elders have done to establish themselves here. But now the responsibility is to go beyond the four walls and establish ourselves beyond. And to be able to demonstrate the value system that we have and how it might be beneficial to society. Because it's still so much feared. In fact, the fear of Muslims has taken over society more than the awareness of what Muslims actually believe in. This is why when it comes to interfaith, it now needs to go beyond the idea of demonstrating that we also believe in Jesus Christ. We also believe in Mary, salamullahi alayhima. That should be established long ago, that we also believe in these great prophets. Sadly, even that hasn't been established. Now to be able to bring people in, remember the first thing we said, we want to show that there is some balance between what we have in our faiths. we also want to show how the faith has and what it comes from Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. We want to show them the depths of the traditions, the ahadith that we have, the way in which Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam have described God. When we have books like Kitab al-Tawheed, Usul al-Kafi, that have lengthy descriptions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nahj al-Balagha, the descriptions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahi, which cannot be compared to by any other religion. You want to love God? We will show you the description that Ali ibn Abi Talib gave about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You want to see the beauty of spirituality and supplication? Let me show you Sahifa as-Sajjadiyah. And there needs to be a normalizing within society of these beliefs and these practices and these treasures that we have within ourselves. The second thing that scholar said, remember we said that the scholar said that there were two things that the Holy Prophet of Islam stated. Number one was freedom of worship. And the second thing this Western scholar mentioned was that the Prophet tried to establish what you and I might call today fair trade. The Quran mentions that we are supposed to have tijara an taradhin, that it's supposed to be a tijara based on mutual happiness, acceptance of one another in the agreement that we have. This is very important. So much of our society is based on economics, right? When we imagine development of society, it tends to be, we start with economic development. What's the GDP of our society? We tend to imagine things in terms of these levels of growth. An important element of Islam was its economic theory. And we don't just mean economic theory. What we mean here is social justice, social mobility for everyone. That we're able to say that everyone is being lifted out of degradation, that their education lifts them, that they are given health, that they are given welfare and benefits. Two elements of social cohesion. The first one is the faith-based social cohesion, and the second is the economic cohesion. Because once everybody is equal and has some access to goodness, then all of them in society can rise together. What we're talking about now in a Tory-based world is millions of children being left behind. The statistic I read is some 3.7 million children are going hungry at the moment in this country. You know, I know your rivals here between Manchester and Leeds, but you'll forgive me for mentioning Leeds. There is a local newspaper in Leeds, and there was a conference. This is only a couple of months back. Anyone wants to see this, I will show it to them tomorrow when we go into further depth and when we talk about dealing with the far right and tabligh towards the far right. You know, there was a newspaper which mentioned an article about a conference of head teachers. And one of the head teachers was saying about their school, the children of this country, which is the 7th largest economy in the world, or the 5th largest economy in the world, this country, in Leeds, children are going so hungry that they go out during their lunch breaks to steal food before they can come back into class. You know, there was a parliamentary meeting which happened last year, cross-party meeting. This wasn't just Labour, Tories, Liberal Democrats. Do you know what they proposed? That this country needs a minister for food and hunger. You can search it yourself. A cross-party group of parliamentarians promoted the idea that there needs to be a minister for food and hunger because so many people are going hungry within this country. Children go to school without breakfast, without lunch. They come home, their parents have to decide whether they eat or their children eat. If you look at the way the Holy Prophet of Islam, Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, began his movement, it was the issue of faith and how to structure a society so that everyone benefited from it. Islam has so many principles that needs to be normalized within society and could aid society. The Quran tells us the importance of working together. Ta'awinu ala al-birri wa taqwa wa la ta'awinu ala al-ithmi wal udwan. Work with each other on the basis of doing good, not in the basis of enmity amongst yourselves. Vie with each other in goodness, the Quran says. When it comes to interfaith, we have to go beyond the idea of keep telling people the very most foundational elements of our faith system. That we believe in Isa alayhi salam, we believe in Ibrahim alayhi salam. In the Quran, the only story, the only chapter which is about a woman, which is titled about a woman, is Lady Maryam alayhi salam. It cannot be that our interfaith dialogue is resting on these shoulders. When we talk about establishing Islam, it doesn't mean just establishing Islam in this sense. It means going out and telling people the depth of the religion, how much that exists there. There is a hadith of our sixth Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi, where the Imam alayhi salam is a hadith. He says, just tell people our words and you will see people will come and flock towards us. Just tell them our words. We mentioned this 2 nights ago. The importance of knowing what Quran says, knowing what Ahadith says. Just tell them our words. And you will see people flocking to us. You know why? Because there is nothing out there that rivals the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam. If you believed that, truly, it would be overflowing with you the want to be able to share it with others. The love, the passion that you have for Ali ibn Abi Talib, you would want to share it with others. The love, the passion that you have for Hussein ibn Ali, you would want to share that with others. The system that you believe in Islam, you and I would want to share that with others. Interfaith dialogue here asks us to challenge the norms of society and to show what we can provide society in making it a better thing. And that Islam should become normalized and that our presence within society is as normal as any other faith is within society. The longer we don't do this, the longer they will continue to challenge and make Islam to be seen as gharib, as the way it is until today. Tomorrow, inshallah, we will look at the far right. And we will talk specifically about tabligh and da'wah towards the far right, and we'll be speaking about how we can respond to the challenges of neo-Nazism and how we need to work with our Jewish brethren and Christian brethren to be able to push back the rise of the far right. Tonight and today, we are commemorating the martyrdom anniversary of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. Imam's last hours were ones in which you can imagine that the whole of Kufa would have been distraught, knowing that it was only going to be a matter of time before they would never see Ali ibn Abi Talib again. The books mention a particular story which is so tragic, which helps us to understand the social order that Islam has. It mentions that in the last hours of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, the poison that was going through his body rendered him thirsty. You all are thirsty at this moment. You know what it feels like when the throat is so dry. What of this individual who has suffered the poisoning for 2 days and his body has gone weak and he cannot keep down in him any food or any water? That the poison is making his body shake, that he cannot even lie in the bed with any stillness. that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam asked for a little bit of milk in his last hours. And when this word reached the people outside of the house that Amir al-Mu'mineen wanted a little bit of milk to drink, the orphans ran back from the house of Ali ibn Abi Talib to their own houses in order to gather some milk. They would run back to the house of Ali and say, "We have brought Ali the milk. We are used to it being that Ali ibn Abi Talib would serve us and he would ensure that our thirst is quenched. But now we are the ones to go and give the milk to Ali ibn Abi Talib." This in itself shows us the way in which the social order of Islam is, and how we look after the whole of society and show society our value system and what our values are. Amir al-Mu'mineen has had to give the asra of Imam to Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. He has had to place the hands of all of the family members into the hands of Imam al-Hasan. He has now had to give the hand of al-Abbas alayhi salam into the hands of al-Husayn alayhi salam. It is said now that in his last hours he gives his wasiyyah to Imam al-Hasan. He says, "Oh Hassan, when my coffin is to be carried, you carry it from one side and you will see from the other side that it is picked up by the angels. You should go outside of the city to this particular area. If you dig, you will find that there is already a grave dug for me, which is a note which bears my name in it from the previous prophets." You can imagine what the last hours of this city must have been like, that the houses, the walls must have been reverberating with the tears of the lady folk, with the tears of the orphans of the city of Kufa. It is said that Ali ibn Abi Talib passes away from this world. As he does so, his own children are crying. Imam al-Hasan and Hussein have to give him the ghusl and take his coffin out. They arrive at that place in which they have to dig, or that it is dug already for Imam Ali alayhi salam. We are told by our dhakireen that when Imam al-Hasan and Hussein come back, they see an elderly man who is lying in the streets. This man has already been so hungry for so many days. This man is a person who cannot take care of himself. He is crying out and wailing for his situation. Imam al-Hasan and Hussein, they sit down beside him. They say, "Oh man, why is it that you are crying?" He says, "Every night it would be that a man would come and clean me. He would bathe me. He would feed me and look after me. But for these last 2 nights, no one has come to my aid, so I am crying out for this man." They began to weep at this story. They said, "Oh man, the person who would come to you in the darkness of the night to assist you was none other than Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. His head was struck by the sword of Ibn Muljim. He was lying on his deathbed for these days. We have just buried him in Najaf. We will be the ones to look after you from now." You can imagine if this is how they used to look after the orphans, how they used to look after the ill folk. You can imagine what this family was like. Therefore, what must it have been like when their family became orphans? What must it have been like when their family members became the ill ones? What was it like when Ruqayya became the orphan? What was it like when Sajjad became the ill ones? It is said that Imam as-Sajjad narrates, he arrives into the city of Damascus. As he does so, they enter him through the great gate. As he does so, the enemies are surrounding him, laughing at him. The people of Damascus, they take stones, they hurl it at him. They throw boiling water at the captives of Karbala. They try to take them and sell them off as slaves. Look at the difference between what Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam used to do to their captives in their community versus what the others used to do to Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. ماتم حسين يا حسين يا علي.
Ya Ali, Hai Ali, Ya Ali, Hai Ali. All together, Ya Ali, Hai Ali. Ya Hai Ali, Ya Ali, Hai Ali, Ya Ali, Hai Ali, Ya Ali. Louder, Ya Ali, Hai Ali, Ya Ali, Hai Ali, Ya Ali. We are the Shia of Ali. We are the Shia of Ali. Ya Ali, Ya Ali. We are the Shia of Ali. We are the Shia of Ali. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. All together, we are the Shia of Ali. We are the Shia of Ali. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. Louder, we are the Shia of Ali. We are the Shia of Ali. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. I want to hear the young ones louder. We are the Shia of Ahsant. We are the Shia of Ali. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. We know that we will face torture and pain, but that will never stop us from calling your name. We'll hold your flag up high as it touches the sky, holding tight to the rope of hope. We fight with your strength in our sight. We will never fall. We are the Shia of Ali. We are the Shia of Ali. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. All together louder. We are the of Ahsant. We are the Shia of Ali. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. This is our pride and dignity. Our master is Ali. We can face every pain and every single difficulty. We call him with our hearts and he hears our cries. Ya Ali, we beseech you, help us please. And at once he does proceed. We will never fall. We are the Shia of Ali. We are the Shia. Ahsant. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. We are of Ali. We are the Shia of Ali. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. The successor of Muhammad, for Islam his blood was shed. Not once did he leave the Prophet, from the army remained ahead. In the battle of Khandaq, Khaybar and Uhud, warrior fierce lion of Allah, Aliyun Waliyullah, we will never fall. We are the Shia of Ali. We are the Shia. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. Louder! We are the Shia. We are the Shia of Ali. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. Our souls had promised our Lord, Labbaika Ya Ali. We will stand as your Shia wherever we may be. We will mourn for your son and show the world who we are in our veins. Ya Hussein, your name remains. We'll remember all your pains. We will never fall. We are the Shia of Ali. We are the Shia of Ali. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ahsant, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. We are the Shia of Ali. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. From birth we have been taught that whenever we're in need, turning to other people, we never have to plead. Call Ya Ali, you'll see, from every trouble you are freed. It is you who we should call out to. You will show us what to do. We will never fall. We are the of Ali. We are the Shia of Ali. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. We are the Shia of Ali. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya. For the last time, with your loudest voice, we are of Ali. We are the Shia of Ali. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya. Every day is Ashura, every land is Karbala. Every day is Ashura, every land is. This is our motto, let's say it proudly and loudly. Every day is Ashura, every land is Bala. Every day is Ashura, every land is. This is the call of the Shia. This is how they give the bay'ah. This is the oath of allegiance till Al-Mahdi's reappearance to the progeny. What do we say every night and every day? Every day is Ashura, every land is Ahsant, every day Ashura, every land is. The path that Hussein provides, He teaches us and He guides with His greatest sacrifice. We learn words alone don't suffice. Words and actions are the key. That's what Hussein wants us to be. Every day is, every land is Karbala. All together, every day is Ashura. Every land is Ashura is every day. That's what our actions should say. Imam Hussein is the way. Let us change from today. Let us be Shia of Ali. Let us be Shia of Ali, so we can join Imam al-Mahdi. Every day is, every land is Karbala. Every day is Ashura. Hussein did not compromise. For God's pleasure he did rise. When he did not give his hand, he wanted us to understand. For Islam we raise our voice. For Islam we raise our voice and disregard all of the noise. Every day is Ashura. Every land is Ahsant. Every day is Ashura. Every land is Karbala shook all the world. It cannot be described in words. It shook the throne of the tyrant. It kept every evil silent. It is the school, it's the way every Muslim should live each day. Every day is Ashura. Every land is louder. Every day is Ashura. For the last time, everyone loudly. Every day is Ashura. Every land is Karbala. جزاكم الله التماس الدعاء. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.